basically an artist can make a portrait whatever he or she wants. Now, I know that, of course, you can work with lighting and different lenses and things, but there is such a huge difference. So what's your attitude to portrait work?
Well, I see in the paper that the Queen had to sit for 10 hours for that picture. She might have 125th of a second if she came to me, which would seem the better bargain, really. I think that there's a very big change in photography, which is actually happening right at the moment, which is going to alter our way of producing pictures of somebody like the Queen, in the sense that we've now got all sorts of techniques that have only just become available to us, which is really the digital manipulation and enhancement.
Well, to make them kinder, you mean?
We can do anything you like after the picture's been taken. In the past, artists have always had that advantage, in that if you see a landscape with a lamppost in the middle that you don't like, or a telegraph pole, or a National Grid thing, you just take it out. We had real problems in that respect.
Well, I want to look at a photograph you took of Harold Macmillan.
Oh, yes.
And this is when he was 90. Now, I adore this because it shows him with all that full character.
Well, he was kind enough to ask me to photograph him on his 70th, 80th and 90th birthdays, and that one I particularly liked. And in fact, I was very fond of the picture because he was an icon of the time when I really grew up, and became to me such... he was a wonderful person to photograph because he had a very interesting face. But one of the problems with that photograph is that I put it in the front of one of my books. And when I was doing a signing session, which doubtless you've had to do, there's awful things that you do. I mean, they never work, do they? Because they have too many people or too few. Right. And I was doing one in Harrods, and they lined up 300 people to try and get me to beat Joan Collins's record of getting them all through. And they all came through like rockets, one after another, shoved through with the right page open at the Macmillan picture. And this one old lady, and I have to add here that I was wearing the same tie sitting in Harrods as he was in that photograph. And this old lady came up, and she was very slow, and I kept saying, "Please, madam, can you come along and I'll sign your book?" She kept looking at the picture, and then she looked at me, and then she looked at the picture, and then she looked at me, and then she crept up to me and she said, "You know, you look so much better without the moustache." She thought it was a self-portrait, but I'm not quite that old. But we didn't have to do anything clever with him, because I wanted to show him actually warts and all, which is one of the beauties of photography.
Absolutely. But I was also thinking on a general angle of photography. You know, people, as you approach the summer, they're always taking their shots. But if we can just talk about the more portrait type, if I was taking a photograph of you or whatever, what do you think is the most important thing when you're just taking more or less a headshot?
I think funny enough, it's got nothing to do with photography at all. It's got to do with something to do with communication. I think if you can get somebody relaxed enough so that they stop putting on those faces that people freeze in a mirror, they look at themselves when they're cleaning their teeth and they come up with all these faces. And the trouble is you can get rid of all that. But then the other thing, I suppose, has to do with lighting and a bit of timing. But I'm getting very despondent. I mean, I was looking at some pictures this morning before I came in of what we might do with some pictures I took 2 days ago. And there was a little bit of a mistake, something that wasn't worth a reshoot, but actually I can just take it all out afterwards. And nowadays you can go into this profession without knowing a quarter of what we had to.
But there's a little part of you that resents that almost.
In the sense that we all mind when we've taken hours to learn something. But by the same token, a few years ago, when I was a young photographer, an assistant in a studio, we were working out our exposures with log tables and things like that. You wouldn't think of that now. But I still think that basic grounding in any profession is terribly useful. And it's not just because I had to roll my sleeves up and spend several hours in the darkroom in those days. It's because I think it's nice to know how to do it.
Well, we've thoroughly enjoyed looking at the pick of the shots, and thank you so much for joining us. Lord Lichfield. Thank you, Patrick.